Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Designing Midlife podcast. I'm your host, Taj Hunter Waite, and today we're learning all things related to breast health with Dr. Donna Marie Manasseh. I hope you'll agree with me that Dr. Manasseh and I covered all the bases. I'm also sharing for the first time in a public platform my breast story. This is episode 7, ladies. Let's go.
You're listening to Designing Midlife, a podcast about today's midlife woman. Ladies, we're more youthful, active, and demanding than any midlife generation before. Join Taj as she dispels the notion of crisis, learn to conquer in all facets from health to career, and design the midlife of your dreams.
So before I get in today's very special and in-depth interview, I wanted to take a brief moment to formally introduce you to Dr. Manasseh. Dr. Donna Marie Manasseh is the Director of Breast Surgery at the Maimonides Breast Center in Brooklyn, New York. Prior to joining the Maimonides team, she was the co-director of the Women's Breast Center and the Chief of Breast Surgery at Stamford Hospital. Under her leadership, the Women's Breast Center at Stamford became the first center to be accredited by the American College of Surgeons National Accreditation Program for breast centers. Dr. Manasseh completed her general surgery residence at New York Presbyterian and her breast surgical oncology fellowship at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. She is a strong advocate for empowering women by educating them about breast health and disease in the hopes that this education will lead to earlier detection and a better chance of being cured. She has published several chapters on breast disease and has co-authored a textbook related to breast disease and evaluation. Dr. Manasseh is a graduate of Harvard Medical School, and I think I can probably list for the next hour her numerous awards and accolades. What a treat to have her with us today. Welcome, Dr. Manasseh. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you, Taj. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's truly a treat for me. It's my pleasure. And I just went through your amazing bio, and I feel like I could spend the entire hour reading all your accolades and awards. I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So at some point I just said, you know what, I'm going to link her, and then whoever wants to find her, go to this link.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I've been blessed for sure.
Of course. I want to jump right in because there's so much information to cover today, and I know you're an extremely busy person. I want to start kind of with your platform because I find it unique. I have spent a lot of time, and I've had many different doctors, oncologists, breast doctors, and what kind of stood out for me was your position of empowering women through education on breast health, in hopes that would lead to earlier detection and saving lives. And how did that come about? Why is that your platform?
Well, it's a number of reasons. One, I was raised by parents where education was everything. Education is power, knowledge is power. We've all heard that saying, but it really is very true. And gaining knowledge and education can make you go very far in life. When you have a cancer diagnosis, there's a lot of things that are taken out of your control. And a lot of patients feel that. And I've often felt that, well, if you have the power of knowledge and really understand either how you can better screen or prevent this disease, or if you can detect this disease early, or just gain knowledge about the treatment options and what is ahead, you really have more empowerment and you feel more in control of the situation, which I think is a very critical thing for patients.
It is, absolutely. And I feel across the board in this era of technology, right? And, Dr. Google, right? Most times I feel to our peril because everything kind of goes back to cancer when you Google whatever symptom you may be having. But it kind of stood out for me, especially with breast health, because although there is information out there, I kind of feel the medical industry on a whole still just push the standard monthly self exams, feel, if you're having any lumps, and if you do go to the doctor, and that it's always kind of a reactive type of position, right? And not necessarily taking the proactive stance and just understanding what it means to have good breast health. I feel in our generations, particularly Generation X, I guess because of the internet, there is this heightened mindfulness on wellness. So how do we go about just pursuing optimum breast health?
Well, there's a number of ways. First, when it comes to educating yourselves, I think as a field, we've often said, make sure you do your own self breast exam and do your screenings. And I think that really should be translated as knowing your body and knowing what your body needs. The reason people do their own self exams is because you can get your mammogram and the cancer doesn't necessarily know you just got your mammogram, and it may show up in terms of symptoms after you've gotten a mammogram, months after. So that's why it's important to kind of just really know your body and know if there's something wrong, that you seek medical help as soon as possible. I think in terms of educating yourself and knowing, you're right, Dr. Google can be actually very dangerous in many situations. So knowing which sites to go to is often helpful. I think that I often recommend to my patients a site like breastcancer.org, Susan G. Komen, or the American Cancer Society, or sites that are trusted. They usually have trusted advisors making recommendations. Think going on blogs with respect to someone who may not have, basically describing their own experience, which is important, but they may not have the medical education behind that to explain that, well, this was my experience, and there are many different types of experiences with breast cancer. So educating yourself is important, just like in anything else. If you're going to go fix your pipes, or you're going to, some people may go and do a YouTube video, or you can do a YouTube video done by, someone who has no experience in plumbing, or you can do a plumber who actually has a YouTube site showing you how to do that. So it's kind of along the same lines.
I get that. And I'm writing down those websites. Breastcancer.org, I'm familiar with. Komen, of course, is a big one. And what was the third one you mentioned?
And the American Cancer Society.
The American Cancer Society. Yeah. We all kind of, I want to say, to love to read what people are experiencing, what they've used, what they've done. But to know what are the trusted sites, I think is really, really important.
It's just a matter of understanding where they're coming from, is what you don't have when you read those posts.
Got it. And what about nutrition? Like, what role does nutrition play? I mean, I feel that I'm always pursuing a healthy living lifestyle, and it's always, is there something specific I should be eating? We know green tea is an antioxidant. Should we be like 3 cups of green tea a day, or only use organic, or turmeric is anti-inflammatory? Like, what are there any kind of, I guess I could say, food staples for breast health?
So I think the food staples for breast health actually apply for all disease processes. I think nutrition, if you really settle it down to it, is the fuel that the human body depends on to run effectively, efficiently, and in its best state. In order to do that, you've got good in, good out, right? So I generally tell patients, everything on the perimeter of the supermarket, the produce, meat section, that's the things you have to target. Limit your processed foods. If you can eliminate them, that's even better. That's a general start. You want to avoid fried foods. You want to minimize the amount of meats you're having, increase the amount of plants and vegetables that you're having, and also have a varied diet. Make sure your diet is very variety. When it comes to the organic portion of this, the reason organic exists is unfortunately because of just what's happened with respect to pollution to our waters and to our fields and soil. So the concept of organic really came about in terms of minimizing the amount of substances that are on your natural foods. So doing foods that are more naturally grown with organic earth-based products is safer for your body than doing something that may have had like a pesticide on it, which at the time when we first developed these processes, the goal was to try to preserve food so there'd be food for everyone. But the reality is that these unfortunately can build, especially in younger women, older women, these things can build and cause actual long-term effects that some of which we're not even sure about. So if you can do some of the organic stuff, that's actually better. When I tell patients organic, anything you're going to eat the skin of when it comes to fruits should definitely be organic. Your apples, your berries, these are the ones that really do need to be organic. The bananas, the oranges, less so because you usually don't eat the skin of that. Unfortunately, organic foods are still very expensive. But sometimes you can do things like, especially in the summertime, depending where you live in the country, farmers markets are also really good. They usually tend to have more organic type produce and staples that you can be a part of and relatively inexpensively.
All good stuff. And I'm glad you clarified that, because even in my circle, even in my house, when we buy into everything, oh, the rice has to be organic, okay, the bananas have to be like, um, if we could get organic water, we'd probably buy organic,
Exactly, exactly.
We do go, I don't want to say overboard, but there's almost, I want to say, a little bit of a fear. If it's not organic, you don't know what it is. Is it going to be harmful? I guess it's just the culture that we live in now. And it's, everything now is, whether it's non-GMO or
Right.
GMO, USDA organic. And, we look at the meats and, everything, I want to say, kind of stamps now with, there's no hormones used in these meats. And,
Right.
you're like, who knows if what is true and what is not. We're just kind of trusting it, right?
Right. And I think nutrition is incredibly important, but the thing I also want to emphasize that don't be obsessed with it, because there are people who stress over the nutritional and then
Yeah.
and don't realize that the stress over the nutritional is actually causing more harm than
Yeah.
whatever you want to eat. So, living your best life really means variety. It means a variety of things. It means eating well, having a good, well-balanced diet, exercising, laughing with friends, and being happy about your life and being in control as much as possible is really what it comes down to. Loving people, spending time with friends, that really all together creates a more positive situation for your body.
You introduced the idea of stress, and we always hear that stress is a trigger in your body for everything, right? To control stress, limit stress. Do you find, even, not just from the perspective of wellness, but even during care in patients, does that continue to be a trigger? I mean, I guess it may even go back to this whole idea of mindfulness and,
Mhm.
like, how heavy does really stress weigh? Because sometimes it's hard for people to not worry.
Yeah, there's actually two types of stress. There's a
Okay.
stress where you are stressed to just get something done, and it's kind of the stress that comes from the fight or flight response. You're gonna get something done, got to do it, got pressure. That stress is not as dangerous as the type of stress where you feel out of control. So that's why I mentioned, empowering yourself with the knowledge and understanding what's happening, whether it's during a healthy time or during a treatment time, really can help you. Because if you have some degree of control, the stress of the unknown and what's going to happen next, and I don't have any control over my time or what's going on, really is the part that's more damaging. So we can't eliminate stress from our lives
Right.
completely, because we need stress a little bit. We need a little bit of stress to kind of push us in one direction or another, to do things and make decisions and get things done. But it's got to be the type of stress where you feel you're more in control. The stress where you're out of control and feel helpless, that's the dangerous stress. That's the stress that can cause diabetes, that can cause heart problems, that can cause cancers. Those are the stress that you really want to try to eliminate and minimize as possible. And it is possible to do that, whether it be via meditation, be it quiet space, being watching something that makes you laugh, changing what's in front of you, so that you just are not focusing on that stressful thing that where you feel out of control.
I have noticed in medical facilities, breast centers, breast departments, that there is a different approach to just how the space is designed. I have noticed that lighting is lower,
Mm-hmm.
background music, and I notice it because I said, well, oh, this just contributes to just having a more calm
Right.
environment.
Right.
And I speak about it with people that I know have been through treatment and have different parts of the spectrum of breast health, and we speak about just what effects that they find yoga has been on their
Mhm.
life, and practicing daily meditation and showing gratitude, and that's kind of new too, right? Within the past 10 years,
Yeah.
that's just grown so tremendously.
Yeah.
Do you see a lot of that in your practice?
Absolutely. Where we are at Maimonides, our breast center actually was designed by a spa designer, not by a hospital designer.
Exactly.
And the
Yeah.
intent of that was, when you walk into this space, you do feel like you're going into a spa. Look, we can't
Exactly.
take away the fear that everyone feels with getting a
Yeah.
test and not knowing what the results are going to be. But as much as you can create an environment where somebody walks in and doesn't feel like this is, this is a hospital and I'm walking into a clinic, the better it is for your psyche. Because again, if you think your body as a machine and it requires all these different pieces and components to work in a specific way, as much calm as you can bring to that system, the more efficient it is at working and doing what it needs to do.
Are there other ways that we kind of help patients or advise women how to control that that out of control helplessness feeling. Some people don't buy into meditation right away, right? Some people just, they feel so out of control, they don't know how to meditate, they can't find that calm. Like, are there other ways that we can suggest that also is helpful? Or
Sure. I mean, meditation is the word that we use today, even though it's an ancient old practice.
yeah, you're right.
Realize meditation could be just closing your eyes and being in quiet space. You don't have to do the arms or sitting in a certain position. You can just sit in your chair and just close your eyes, turn the lights off in the room, and just take a breath. It also, prayer is meditation. There are people who pray.
True.
Say a prayer, that's a meditative process. I also tell patients, as much as you can, it takes a village to do anything, as far as I'm concerned. If you're going to get a test, or you're going to get a mammogram, or you're going to start your treatment, as much as you can, see if you can bring someone with you or have that support system with you. In these times, it's a little bit difficult because, with social distancing, et cetera,
Right.
and hospitals are being very particular about who can come into the room, and for good reason. But then there's also having somebody on the phone. So we allow that all the time. Having somebody on FaceTime, we allow that all the time. And then plan to, when you're leaving your test, leaving your treatment, to spend time with that person if you can, to just provide you support. And just the distraction sometimes is also just quite helpful. So meditation is, I think, a buzzword that we use because we know it's an ancient practice. We know that it has its effects. Truthfully, hanging out with your friends and laughing really has its own positive effects as well. And I think sometimes that's what you need. And that can be enough.
Very, very, very good stuff. And for me this year, I've been affected by, I have like I want to call it, it's kind of like a side effect of COVID, because I feel like although I am active and although I feel like I exercise regularly, I have also seen weight gain. Right. But I don't know if it's because of COVID and I'm just cooking more and we're home more and it's comfort meals and, all of that stuff. And then I know I get a little paranoid because I know weight also plays a role in our health, and increase in fat cells affects so much in the body. Can you talk a little bit about that, and how important or maybe not important weight is to our breast health?
Yeah, weight is actually an incredibly important component that probably wasn't as appreciated in the past as it is today. Again, not just for breast cancer health, but cardiac health, diabetes, all those things can be factors in cancer care and treatment. And so the closer you are to your ideal body weight, the better it is in terms of your own health, in terms of your ability during treatment to tolerate side effects, et cetera. The extra weight, the actual physiology behind the extra weight actually contributes to producing more estrogen sometimes because of that extra tissue. So I often tell people, if you're in a more stationary state for whatever the reason, remember there are things you can do even around your home, even if you're not going out. It's walk. If you have stairs in your house, walk up and down the stairs. There are lots of, especially in this time, lots of videos. There are actually walking videos online that you can do walking in place at home. Make a concerted effort to the time you would have gone to the gym or the time you would have done something along those lines to set aside a half an hour, 45 minutes of the day, just do some kind of exercise video. American Cancer Society, says that you have to do at least 30 minutes a day for the week, and it's enough exercise. You don't have to do, weightlifting or some formal type of exercise in that direction, but it's walking usually is the best type of exercise that you can give and to do if you're stuck at home. And then in terms of meals, it's portion control. You still can have those comfort meals, just have a smaller portion of it, because that's really what it comes down to. Portion control really can help control weight as well.
Dr. Manasseh, we started in March with, after dinner, we'll do family walks, and, we'll walk around the neighborhood. And then we were doing like 3-mile, like speed walking. We weren't just like strolling and holding hands. And I still see the weight coming on. And I was like, well, is it where I am in life? Is it my age? Is it, what is it? I'm not sedentary at all. But that's a totally different issue. That's me probably just trying to figure out, are my hormones out of whack? Like,
yeah, I mean, as we get older, our metabolism slows down, right? I mean, if you look at a little child, they can eat probably twice as much as you can, and they'll metabolize it quickly.
Right.
They also happen to be a lot more active than we are, unconsciously, I should say. And so we automatically, as we get older, need to be more conscious about what we eat and the portion controls, which we do not do when we're a child. We're a child, we eat whatever we want to eat whenever we want to eat it. As an adult, as you get older, you have to be a lot more conscious about the amount of food that you take in and when you take in and the types of food that you're taking in. Yeah. There are things that we may enjoy that we can actually supplant with something different. So we may like, for example, French fries, right? Everybody loves French fries. do sweet potato fries that are baked instead of French fries as an alternative option. Now we should think about our food a little bit more. I had a friend who had a pedometer, and she kept looking at it because whenever she'd check it, she only had done like about 3,000 steps.
Right.
It's broken. She put it on her 5-year-old son, and by the end of the day, he had 16,000 steps, and he hadn't gone walking. He's just moving. And I think that's part of it. We have to move, and we have to be conscious of what we move. So I often tell patients, look at your phone. There's a pedometer on there, usually, especially with today's phones. Just check in on it. You'd be surprised. When COVID first started and I was actually home, I know that I do at least 6,000 a day just at work, just by moving. At the end of the day, I looked at it and I was doing 300. I was like, how is that even possible? This has to be broken. So I think you just have to be more aware of it to be to make a decision as to whether what it could or could not be.
Right. Yeah. That did make a difference when I started, being more diligent about putting on my Apple Watch, checking my steps. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do the 10,000 steps a day. Then I really noticed, there were days where just in and out of my home office, I was just getting 600 steps. And I'm like, what?
Exactly.
That's why I have the extra. That's why I have the extra pounds now. So before we came on the talk today, I kind of spent some time on Google, or maybe probably even more specifically YouTube, kind of going down the Dr. Manasseh deep dive and of all of your interviews and all this information that you give. And I came across a video on your hospital's website, Maimonides in Brooklyn, and you speak passionately about just this continuous care. When you have your patients, even when the treatment is successfully complete, it doesn't end there for you. And I'm going to talk about my personal journey in a little bit, but that also really made an impact for me because, like I said before, I've experienced a lot of different doctors, and I've never had that level of follow-up. And I can even think from my experience that it would have made a world of difference just to check in. And what does that continuous care mean for you? What does that look like? Because I don't think we should settle in our healthcare. We should want or expect the best from our doctors.
Yeah. For me, the continuous care really is exactly as you described. It's like a touch base thing. In the beginning of a cancer diagnosis, and as soon as the treatment's first over, I check in regularly with our patients, and most of my partners do the same every 3 months or so, just to make sure things are going well. And sometimes how frequently we do that kind of depends on what stage the person is or what their process has been. Yeah. After that, when things have settled down, I like to just touch base to make sure that they're doing well. There's a concept in breast cancer care, and I think in cancer care in general, of survivorship. We've gotten so good, especially in the world of breast cancer, at making sure our patients do well and they survive this disease. There's now a new emerging section of making sure that they're doing well after and during survivorship. And that means not just, doing your regular mammograms, everything okay, but are you also doing your colonoscopy? Are you doing the things you need for your heart? Is your sex life okay? Are you eating healthy? Are you exercising? Because yes, you've fought this incredible battle and you've gotten through it, but now I need you to continue to be healthy. You've worked really hard and we've worked together as a team to get you here. Now we want to make sure that you enjoy the quality of life that you now have. And so in order to do that, in order to make sure my patients are doing that, I like to just touch base, and I do it for a number of years afterwards. And it depends on the patient, it depends on their stage and what they have to go through. And some patients are like, I'm done, I'm good, I'll see you later, I'll go say my OP, and that's fine. But I think for majority of patients, I like to keep an eye on making sure they're doing just the basic stuff, touching base, that we're all good and your life is what we were hoping it to be.
That's tremendous. That's really, really tremendous. And I'm not saying out there that other medical centers don't do that. That just has not been my experience for, even people that I know that have been through that. I kind of want to take a moment and share. I have talked about how breast cancer has affected my life, sporadically on my social media channels, but I want to share it today because Dr. Manasseh has played a really impactful role in guiding me on some really life-changing decisions that I have made in the past with respect to my breast health. I'm blessed to say that I have not had breast cancer, but my mom succumbed to breast cancer when she was 39, diagnosed at 35. And even with this idea of continuous care, I mean, that was a very, very long time ago. I was 8 at the time when she passed. And when we were in Jamaica at the time, and when the lump was discovered and she was diagnosed, we were in the process of moving to Florida. And so she went through treatment here in Florida. And I really don't know exactly what age that was prior to, because it came back. They removed one breast where the lump was, and then it came back sometime after in the other breast. And by the time that was caught, it was then spread into her bone. So it was also bone cancer as well, which is a very painful cancer. I have another friend whose mom just went through the same thing, and I just seeing how the level of pain that she endured and how quickly she went was really, really mind blowing. So it's a very personal issue for me. And because of my family history, I had one of my mom's sisters had it. One of her brother's daughters has had it, and they're both were survivors of breast cancer when they went through treatment. And it has greatly impacted my experience, or my medical experience, from I was 26. My doctors locally started me on a regimen every 6 months of mammogram, MRI, mammogram, MRI. And as life would serve me, I was a mother at 35, and my son was the same age that I was when my mom was diagnosed. So that those parallels spooked me. And my mom and Dr. Manasseh's dad are siblings. We are cousins. What an amazing resource to have, right? So Dr. Manasseh, and when that point in my life hit, I called you. You were in Brooklyn at the time. You were already a breast surgeon. Your journey as well is inspired by our family history, in a sense, correct?
That's correct.
And, so I reached out to you and I said, hey, this is what is going on. My doctors are mentioning or suggesting that I look into maybe a prophylactic double mastectomy, which is a preventative procedure for those that are not aware, and also to do the BRCA genetic testing that was very big 10 years ago, or just coming on the scene probably 10 years ago. And so you did suggest that I do that, which I did it. And I tested positive at the time for BRCA2, which put me in like 85 percentile of risk, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so being a young mom and of one only child, and I was also the only child for my mom, there was just so much just at play that I wanted to pursue the double mastectomy. So Dr. Manasseh invited me up to Connecticut, where she was, to meet with her team, talk about the options, and just to educate me. That is how she approaches things, just to educate me on what my options were, even what my options were for reconstruction. I remember meeting with your reconstruction team and just learning just really what this procedure entailed. And that was basically to remove both breasts. And, if I wanted to pursue reconstruction, that, at the time it could have been implants, or what is the procedure called when you use the fat from your body?
The tram flap procedure.
The tram flap. Yeah. I remember seeing those pictures of the tram flap, and I gotta say, I was terrified. I was, and I hear that it's come so much further in the past 10 years, but I was so terrified. At the time, I thought that I'm going to do this procedure in Connecticut. I mean, I have a cousin that's doing this. Like, what better scenario for me to make, that I have a family member that I love and adore do this procedure for me. I know, like, what better care am I going to get? It didn't work out that way. And it's basically insurance. They were like, no, we don't pay for you in Connecticut. You live in Florida. Yeah, we'll pay for, you are 100% covered in Florida.
Yeah.
And, so then it probably took me another 2 years to find a team that I trusted and was ready to go forward with it. And that was 2012 exactly. It was the year that I decided to take that step. And I don't even know if I would have done it if I didn't have the access to you, because there was a different level of information that you could provide me that I really wasn't getting anywhere else. And it's such a big decision to remove your breasts, and since I've seen many, Angelina Jolie, like many other celebrities go through this same process, and the recovery of it was challenging also in itself. I couldn't drive for like 8 weeks or 6 weeks, something like that. And just not being the independent person that you're used to being as a woman and mom was also challenging. Do you see a lot of women today opting for that preventative procedure? Is that growing in popularity?
It is, especially after Angelina Jolie had announced her situation. I think we call it the Angelina Jolie effect, a lot of that. But also genetics has become people are a lot more aware of their genetics. So that's become a lot more of the driver as well. A lot of patients in the past, during the time that you and I spoke about this, didn't really think about genetics or being an influencer in that way. But today, a lot of women will come in just from the popular genetics, 23andMe and those types of things, will say, hey, I have a family history. I want to check my genetics, see if that's a risk. And if they do find that they are positive, we'll consider that as an option. And also because plastic surgery today is increasingly becoming much more easy and a lot more competitive with the natural breast, if you will, and cosmetically looking really, really good, that patients are a lot more comfortable than what was done in the past.
I feel like it was a smooth process for me, but yes and no, right? There are hard decisions to make. Do I keep my nipples? Do I not keep my nipples? Right? I opted to keep my nipples. Full transparency here, I did opt for the gummy bear implants, but then not very long after my procedure, one of my breasts was encapsulated. I guess that's like scar tissue around. And at the time, the reconstructive team was, you have the option to replace it. That's the best thing to do if you want to replace it, or it's fine if you choose to live with it. That's a personal choice for you. At the time, I felt like it was just so many procedures, and I was a little bit over it. And I was like, oh no, they were never perfect to begin with. I'm not ready for another procedure. I'll just live with that. Is that a concern that I should have, the encapsulation, or
capsular contracture is what we call it. Anyway, it's really more of a symptomatic and a cosmetic appearance. Some women complain that that area is hard or tighter, but it's more of a cosmetic thing. It's not going to increase your risk for cancer in any way, make it more difficult to find a cancer if it developed there. It's just it's scarring, essentially.
The scarring. I also recall, and I think I did send you this article maybe about 2-3 years ago. There was a episode on Good Morning America where there were reports of the implant actually causing breast cancer. And they did refer to specifically the gummy bear implant. At the time, the cases were so few and far in between. And even when I followed up with my local team, I believe they told me they were implants produced from a particular company, and that was not my company. But do you see any increase in that type of cancer?
Not at all. We have yet to see one, honestly. And I work with 3 other breast surgeons and 3 plastic surgeons, and none of us have actually seen a case of that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Very thankfully, a very rare scenario. And really, I think even when it is detected, if it's detected early enough, is very treatable with minimal treatment. It usually just involves removing the implant and the capsule that contains the disease. But usually, what I usually tell patients, just with any part of your body, if something is just not normal or baseline for you, if you're noticing this on that side all of a sudden, or if it's swollen on that side more than it's been before, it needs to be investigated, it needs to be checked. Generally, a plastic surgeon will recommend an MRI to see if there's any extra fluid in that space, take a sample of the fluid and check if there's anything there. But thankfully, I've yet to see, since that's come out, I have yet to see a case. My partners have yet to see a case. And remember, not just for reconstruction after breast cancer surgery, but for just general reconstruction and augmentation, as many as we do, it's a really low number that actually have that disease.
Well, I'm happy to hear that, because that was definitely a buzz when the report came out, because implants have been around for I don't know how long, right? Decades. And just the idea that this could actually give you cancer was a little bit triggering and very, very worrisome. Do you find that most women opt for reconstruction? Because I do know women that decided against it, and that is a very personal decision. But is it more so?
Yeah, more people do opt for reconstruction.
Yeah.
The reasons that individuals will opt against it often starts with insurance. In many states, it's a part of the cancer care. Your insurance company should not give you a hassle with respect to doing the reconstruction. It's not a cosmetic surgery. It is in terms of the way we do the procedure, but it's not in terms of why it's being done. It should be covered under your regular cancer care. So that's usually the reason why people will initially refuse it. And then once we explain to them that, look, it's part of your cancer journey, it's part of your cancer care, it's included, then most people will do the reconstructive option.
And what about the idea of to keep your nipples or not? Because to keep them, there is, I guess, a really, really tiny amount of tissue still left there to hold the form of the nipple, right? But if we, does that still expose you, or are women opting to, no, I don't need the nipple either?
So the nipple sparing came about because if you look at just how we do a mastectomy in general, we do, especially with skin sparing, which is where you do the reconstructive option, most of the skin of the breast is left behind. There's always going to be a few little cells that we really can't completely get rid of. Even if you do a mastectomy without reconstruction, there's still going to be a few cells that are going to be left behind. And with that procedure, we know there's still a very, very low chance of recurrence. The nipple sparing came about because it's felt that the same type of number of cells may be left behind. So why take the nipple if you don't have to? We usually will recommend taking the nipple if either cosmetically it won't really look good, or if from a cancer perspective it's too close, or it's going to be a positive margin, it's too close to the nipple, which case, just like the skin, you would take that area anyway. We've been doing nipple sparing for almost a decade, and we've truly had very, very low recurrence rates. I wouldn't really be concerned about it in the appropriate individual. So if your cancer surgeon and or your reconstruction surgeon say, hey, from a cosmetic perspective, it will be fine, and from an oncologic perspective, it'll be fine, then it's safe to do so.
For those of us that did the preventative mastectomy, do you feel we still need to do mammograms, or that doing the mastectomies drop your risk at to what, under 5% maybe, or under 1%?
It's very, very, very low. We don't do a mammogram in individuals who've done prophylactic mastectomy and have implants. The ones who don't have any kind of reconstruction, we definitely can't, because you can't. It's just a flat chest. But some people will say for just monitoring the implant, you may do an MRI every couple of years, but not necessarily a regular screening protocol.
Okay. I'm glad I remembered to ask that, because when the whole idea of the cases with the implant came out, I went to my doctor and I was like, I want an ultrasound, I want an MRI, I want everything. And the insurance companies fought me on it. They didn't want to approve it because I had the mastectomy.
Right.
And I literally had to appeal to a board to get it approved. Right. They did eventually approve it for me, but my doctor said basically what you said, you're fine. But, for you to have peace of mind, let's, get you in, and just so you can sleep at night. So, but yeah, I'm glad, because I don't do really any screening right now, but I will look into doing MRIs every couple of years, because I don't do any kind of level of screening anymore.
Right. Yeah. And you don't really have to, except again with the implant.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know. Do you suggest the BRCA testing only for women that have the genetic exposure, or, it's in their family history, or across the board?
It's a great question. It's a question that we're kind of struggling with right now ourselves. Yeah. In general, we often absolutely recommend it. Anybody has a cancer history of any sort, by the way. So if you have not just breast cancer, but if there's ovarian cancer in the family, if there's pancreatic cancer, if there are men with breast cancer in the family, that's a big red flag for us when we recommend genetics evaluation and screening. For individuals where there's no family history at all, one could make the argument, well, unlikely that you'll have a gene. However, one has to ask the question that somebody's got to be first before the gene's demonstrated. And it also depends on the type of family you have. There are families that are big families with, 10, 12 siblings. Well, unlikely that you're going to have a gene if everybody has not had a breast cancer or any kind of cancer. But if you're a sibling, if you're an only child and your parents were only children, then you haven't had enough people to demonstrate whether there's a genetic effect or not. I often say, look, if you're thinking about it, there's no harm in going to talk to a genetics counselor who's whose job really is to go through your family tree and go through what the risk is or what they think the risk is of you having some type of genetic mutation. And breast cancer is not the only cancer that can kill, obviously, if not detected early. There are colon cancers, there are other things to look for. So I think it's worth it to at least speak to a genetic counselor and with them come to a decision whether it's worth getting tested or not. Seeing a genetic counselor doesn't mean that you're absolutely definitely going to get tested. It just means you're having a conversation.
Right. That's very good to know, because I do see cases, like you said, there's always a first one. I do see cases where women say, but it's not even in my family. I have no family history.
Right.
And, you know, and then even cases with young women that say they've had no family history. So,
Right.
you know, then it's like, how does that happen? But, you know, there's always a first one. You know, we're talking today, which is October 29th. And, you know, probably by the time we get this edited and out, Breast Cancer Awareness Month will be gone. And I feel like, you know, I mentioned to you when we were talking last night, I feel like it's just flown by, right? Because we're used to seeing the 5K runs, and Coleman is normally all over the place. And the sports teams are wearing pink ribbons, and you see it in the commercials. And it's you know, I guess everything is kind of fallen a little bit flat, you know, at the peril of COVID this year. Everything else is kind of background noise. You know, in spite of all of that, the conversation, you know, is necessary and is a 365 conversation. How do you go about just keep your messaging going?
Well, as you know, breast cancer doesn't just happen in October and it doesn't
Right.
October. So we have, as I'm sure many facilities do, we have year-round events that we still continue to do and mention to our patients. And through these events in the springtime, the summertime, we make a point to say, you know, mammograms are still important, screening is still necessary to find this as early as possible. So that's really where your messaging comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Media stuff really happens in October because that's the month. But I think it's important just with anything, cardiac, diabetes, any of those type of things, to always be aware of where you are and what needs to be done.
It's kind of the value of these type of awareness months, right? Because it kind of brings it front of mind. Well, you're like, you know, it comes around, you're like, oh God, I got to schedule my mammogram. Or, you know, when you see the pink ribbon is the trigger for all of that, right? Because otherwise we just kind of all go around our, you know, our general everyday life. And we, you know, unfortunately, we don't think about it
Right.
Until that time comes. I've been, you know, I'm so grateful to have you with us today, and there's so many notes that I took because in spite of having access to you, there is still so much that, you know, I feel like I just need to keep front of mind in my own breast care and just sending the proper messaging out there. What did we leave out? Did we leave anything out?
You know, I think you did a fantastic job of exploring a lot of topics. As we both have said, each topic can take an entire show all by itself.
Yes.
But I think the most important thing that always seems to make a difference is fear and lack of fear or having fear. I think when it comes to screening, nobody wants to do any kind of screening.
Right.
You know, have that group of people, that one person that you trust and say, look, I need to get my colonoscopy this year, or I need to get whatever. Have them be the person or their monitor to say, hey, did you do this? Did you do this? Do that with someone, because really the key to all of this, the only defense we really have against cancer, heart attacks, is really just being mindful and being thoughtful about how we evaluate our bodies. Screening is really, really important and actually does save lives.
Thank you for that, Donna Marie. And please, everyone, listen to her. Not just be a health advocate for ourselves, be a health advocate for someone else in someone else's life as well. It may be the very thing that saves their life. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you with me today.
Great to see you. Very kind. Take care.